Walpole United, WFC.
Hello, welcome to Walpole United WFC Friday Night Fans Forum. That was a mare, that was. I forgot to put live when I clicked the intro. My phone and everything crashed. I don't know what happened there. What an awful start. But it's fine. So these three are going to carry me. This is going to get really confusing today. We've got Connor and Charlie, and then we've got John and John. So this could get really, really confusing if we're speaking quick. But everyone get in the comments. We've got so much to talk about, as always, on Friday, as we tweeted earlier. But go around the house, see how everyone is. How is everyone doing? It's sunny now.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Not too bad at all.
Yeah, good. Happy to make my Friday night debut, so thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. John is now telling me what's going on.
I think he's okay now. I was just it might be.
We understood about 10% of the words you spelled there.
Got nothing to do.
Still working okay. Yeah.
Nothing to do with my accent though, so that's all right. That's fine. This is going to be it's good job John's here. If you're wondering why, I don't know why, John, you're on bottom right. It's weird. Anyway, let's just get straight into it.
This is yours. A good old Friday night. You took it over, so I can have a relaxing one. I can just put in every now and again with a fantastic comment.
So he thinks. Let's get straight into it. We may as well start with the one that's on the thumbnail. 5 players. Is this going to be that? There's a lot more than 5. You know, we don't know. Obviously, there could be a lot of leavers this summer, regardless of contract. Obviously, we've put 5 because that is down to contracts and all kinds of things. We'll go around the house before we go into a deeper dive at this. Charlie, just simple kind of question, I guess. Yeah, obviously the question is this the last home game for 5 certain players? Do you think it is for some of those?
Some of them, yes. It's interesting, isn't it? Because a couple of them are just loans anyway. Or, well, sorry, Groenen's loan, isn't she? And Diane was a short-term contract. I feel like it probably depends with Diane what happens with Aoife Mannion longer term and Millie Turner. Because even if we got a couple more centre-backs in the summer, we could still actually be light, couldn't we? So she's one probably I'd expect we would keep on. Maybe give her another 6 months or give her another 12 months. I can't see. Martha Harris is an interesting one because she's been there since the start, hasn't she? But she doesn't kick a ball, and she's been fit for a little while now. I think for a good few weeks, but just isn't getting on the pitch. So I think it kind of depends on whether she wants to be playing football as well. Depends what she wants from. She's I think she's older than you would expect. She's quite late 20s now. So it depends what she wants to be doing at this point. I feel like I think if we'd won that game against Aston Villa, I might have just said yes romantically for Ona and Jackie, but potentially no now. I think, and Brun not kicked a ball, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see her, if she's not here come the end of the summer. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know whether that was aimed back at me or to the two Johns below. I don't know how I'm going to I'm going to have to find a way throughout the show to try and distinguish which John I'm aiming this at. John below me, John K. I'll come to you first.
Okay, that's easy.
We'll go with that. What do you reckon? And also, there's quite a few players obviously out of contract. As you mentioned there, Jackie, Ona, Brun, Diane, potentially Martha Harris. Do you expect this will be kind of the last home game in a United shirt? That is.
I agree with what Charlie said. I think for some of them it will be. I think Martha Harris hasn't really played that much, has she, this season? So I suspect she might want to leave. Colwell's an interesting one. She's actually done a pretty good job. I think because obviously we've had a lot of disruption defensively this second half of the season when she was playing. She's done a relatively good job. I do reckon she might be one if the club want to keep her. I reckon she probably will say, because obviously she was a massive United fan growing up. That's an honour. So I think I reckon if the club wants to stay, I can see her staying. Obviously, as Charlie said about Brun, she's hardly played. It's been unfortunately a disappointment that signing in January. She's obviously not scored, I don't think, and I can see I think it was Leon, was it we are from? Can't remember now, but I can see it potentially going back there and being transferred somewhere else. And obviously Jackie and Ona, possibly the two biggest ones. I agree. I think Ona, if she doesn't go this summer, it'll probably be next summer, I would have thought. I think she would like to go back to Barcelona probably, and obviously there's a lot of rumours that Barcelona obviously interested in her, so I can see it being her final game, unfortunately, but if not, then maybe another season perhaps. And Jackie, I think, unfortunately, she's obviously talented, but I don't think we've seen the full potential, and I think you possibly need a bit of improvement in there in the summer. Someone, I think you need more from your midfielders, controlling the play a bit more, so potentially she might go in the summer.
John, other John. Obviously, you thought of this idea, obviously, when we were conversing earlier.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Because obviously, like I said, I think we're all we had a chat beforehand. We're all expecting, I think, Martha Harris maybe to move on, maybe Diane potentially, although she has become a kind of a fan's favourite. I think the players you're talking about, a lot of them are fans' favourites, aren't they? And I think that's going to be tough to take for some fans if some of these players do move on.
Yeah. Well, this is why I was thinking, this is why it came into my head now. Last home game, I've got a feeling that the club and the players would probably know by now what the chances are. They might not know for definite. Some probably do. Some people have probably made their mind up if they're going to stay or not, especially the likes of Sinia and maybe Diane. I think that, they might have made their minds up if they're going to be staying or not, or the club might have made their minds up for them. So I've got a feeling that, at the end of this game on Sunday, we might see a reaction from them. Are they going to spend a bit longer clapping the crowd, and or something similar to that? I'm not too sure. The players that everyone's mentioned are the players that I had on my mind. So I definitely think, unfortunately, I can't see how Sinia's going to stay. It's a shame to say that because she's a quality player, but we just haven't seen it. And I think, we'll talk about Skinner's comments later from today, but he did mention about players doing it in other leagues. And this is another league for Sinia. So just because she's performed in other countries, it doesn't mean that she's going to perform in this country. And that's very harsh. And I know there's going to be a lot of fans who potentially disagree with that. But I'm just basing it on what we've seen of her so far in the United shirt. And that's very little. So, I can kind of see her going. Was she just a stopgap like Diane? Diane obviously had to be a lot more of a player because of the injuries. But Charlie, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I don't know if everyone follows the players on social media and bits and pieces like that. But what I will say about, and it doesn't always come down to this, but with Diane and Sinia, they do seem to be quite an important part of the squad, in spite of not playing at the moment, whether it's through injury or anything else. They do seem very well integrated and very much part of the group. So that could perhaps mean that the club take a bit of a punt on them and hope that, particularly Sinia, that she gets over the injury troubles, because she would hopefully offer quite a lot as a footballer. She's obviously everyone went wild from Scandinavia when we got her and said how brilliant it was, but also just from a squad cohesion point of view, from the outside looking in, they look quite important in that regard as well, which I know isn't everything, but it is still quite important. So maybe if they think they've got something to offer, that could be another reason to perhaps keep them.
I can see that, because we spoke plenty of times on this podcast about just needing experience, and Diane's obviously going to bring that. If Sinia comes to full fitness, we know what she's definitely capable of. But I just don't know if there was January loans or short-term.
And we need Diane. Diane's got to play at Old Trafford. Diane's got to play at Old Trafford, hasn't she?
Yeah, I'd like to see that, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and obviously being a United fan, it might help. She might settle for a bit of a Martha Harris kind of role, where she might be third or fourth choice in her position, but she's happy to be that. She's coming towards maybe the latter end of her career now, and United fans probably know where else she'd want to be. So if she's happy with that and United are happy keeping her in that squad, then I can definitely see that side of it. We spoke about Martha Harris. We've said now for 2 or 3 seasons, is she the next one in line to go? I have always defended her, saying that at the time, as a fourth choice fullback, not too bad. She gives them all every time that she plays. Very good. Well, I want to say very good, but I think good defensively. Doesn't offer much going forward, but we have Ona on the other side who can do that. But surely at some point you think that for us to move on, we need more competition in those fullback areas. So I think this is probably the year where Martha does go, and then that just leaves us with Jackie and Ona that we've discussed already. That's completely up in the air. We've got no idea how that's going to go. Does Champions League hold a bearing? I don't know if it does with Ona, if I'm honest. I think Ona would more like to go back home just because it's home and it's Barcelona. She's still fairly young, so she can play Champions League, for the rest of her career at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ona stays for one more year. However, Jackie, it's pretty much make or break for her now. If she does want Champions League, then this is a time where she needs to kind of make that move, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think I'll ask a question in a minute that's probably going to sound a little bit on the line, but I am going to ask it in a second. But I'll just quickly throw my 2 pence. And I think Brun will stay an extra season. I think I've just had a look there. She's had 4 shots in a United shirt, and for a striker, that is appalling. That just shows how little she's played. And I think the game she did play, I think she started at City away, and then she played against Arsenal. And obviously we had Chelsea in the cup. It's not exactly like we had an easy run for it to come into. So I can see her staying another 12 months just to give her a chance, because like I said, she's come in, she had the 3 hardest teams in England, and then she got injured and she's not played since. So yeah, it's a tough one. But
can I play devil's advocate on that though? Because as United fans, we talk a lot about injuries and fitness. She's come straight in, and it might have just been bad luck, and people in the comments probably know Sinya's history more than me. If she's never injured before, then it's not such a big deal. But should we be keeping Sinya and thinking in hope that she'll have full fitness next season, or should we be looking elsewhere to players who haven't got injury records? And just throw that one back out there. John, do you want to jump in on that one? Should we be kind of relying on hoping that people are going to be fit and hoping that people are going to react to playing in a different country?
I think you make a good point about the injury. Like, obviously she has been injured. Like I said, that might be pure coincidence, and maybe next season she might improve if we decide to keep her. But yeah, you definitely need. I think you see how injuries are almost ravaged our season, the second half of the season. I think we were comfortably heading towards the top 3, and then back in January or February time, and now because we've had so many bad results, unfortunately, injuries have played a part, and that I'll discuss it when it comes to substitutions in a moment. But you need players you can rely on if things aren't going well in a game to come on. That can make a difference, and I think if she is going to be injured, then it's not something you ought to be doing. I don't think you much rather have a player who is capable of, who is going to be fit almost all the time to score your goals and that. So it's no good at playing half the games and in a season she might score 8 in 16 games. But if you're playing like something like 30 games, then you're going to need her for those 30 games. Sometimes it's about availability, and if she is not going to be available for a significant amount of games during the season, that it's not worth pursuing. But like you say, it might be bad luck, it might be due to the climate and everything. So that's obviously a decision the club will have to make, looking at what her injuries were like previously and whether you can rely on her to play a significant role next season.
If I could just jump in one last time, I'm just going to contradict myself now and play devil's advocate with myself. So here I am, and I've been saying this all season, and Skinner mentioned it today, so it's on my mind. Players are coming across from different countries, and they're not settling right away. Well, now Cinya's been in the country for a few months now, so would we be stupid to let her go now that she's probably settling? Because like if we let her go and bring another player in, they might not settle for another 6 months. So now that Cinya's been in the country, do we kind of try and keep her here? And I thought that was to Charlie. Because looking at it that way, that kind of makes a little bit of sense.
January signings are always an interesting one anyway, aren't they? Because you don't have that. If you get them early doors in sort of the summer, then you get a pre-season with them, and then that probably helps with the process. I would keep her, but I completely know what John, not glasses, is saying about if you have someone who you know regularly is I'm just going to go glasses, John, and then John. So, if someone's going to be regularly injured, is it worth splashing your money and your wages and bits and pieces on that? I just feel like it could. I don't know. Leon might want her back. There's also that we might not have much choice. But I think if the option's there for another loan, that perhaps you go for it, just because it does. Like she's Danish Player of the Year. It does appear, and I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched loads of Danish football and I've watched loads of Leon, because I haven't. But the people who do know those types of football speak incredibly highly of her. And I don't just mean like average Joe blogs on Twitter who just spouts anything. I mean people who, in women's football, who know what they're talking about, rave about her. And because of that, I would keep her. I would want her to stay, just because we actually don't know what she can do because of injury. But it would be nice to see. But then the question becomes, do we play in such a way that will work for her? Because an out and out poacher who plays just within the width of the 18-yard box, but I suppose that's another question entirely. But you think if we keep her on, we perhaps then need to think about how we're going to play to her strengths. Because if we do keep her, we're going to need to play a particular way, I think, as well. But in short answer, yes, I would keep her.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that to an extent. Like I said, we've not seen her enough to make a judgment on whether she's good enough or not. We know from listening to people, as you said, what she can do elsewhere. My question I want each of you to answer, I know John's trying to fob this one off, but I am going to ask it anyway, in terms of it's a tough one to ask, so I appreciate this, but is there kind of room for this sentimentality with certain players amongst the fan base? We know that there's areas of our fan base that are attached to certain players. Everyone's got favourite players, right? That's always going to happen within any team that you support. But there's a lot of, I feel, do United, I guess the question is, do United need to become ruthless and go, actually, no, we need to move past this. Just because you're great with the fans and all those kind of things, you don't fit the system anymore. We need to move you on for these reasons. I'm not going to name players because you could go through the whole squad and say that. But do you think United now need to move to this kind of ruthless model and stop holding on maybe to the sentimental value that some players have? For example, the reason why I brought this up, obviously the conversation was around Diane. Now, I think Diane's been excellent this season, but would any other top three club keep her on purely for the sentimental reason that she is a diehard United fan and everything else? That I just had a thought that, while you were speaking, John, because I think there is that element with some players. I think that they just want to hold on to them just because they are likable people. But do we need to maybe move past that and start looking at player quality, higher than what maybe we've got elsewhere? I don't know who wants to go on that first.
I'll jump on it quickly then, because you can talk about sentimentality for a number of different reasons. So the original 21, we every season, every summer, 2, 3 or 4 of them go, and it's that's a sad time. That could potentially happen right now, and I can see a couple of 3 going this summer. I appreciate 2 of them might not actually be playing at the moment, or if not 3 of them might not be playing. But I think that's a big thing. There's sort of sentimentality there. We'd be all disappointed if Millie Turner was to leave this summer, which I really hope that she doesn't. But we saw Amy Turner leave last summer because she wanted a new challenge. Maybe Millie Turner at some point will want a new challenge as well, and that would be really disappointing. So you got that side of it, and then you got like the Galactico signing. So, for example, the Jackies, who's been here a little while, United fan, but also very, very good player. But you was talking about like fitting systems, etc. She's not been first choice for a lot of this season. Admittedly, she's been injured, but even when she hasn't been injured, she's not always been first choice. So, you got the sentimentality there. We all know how much of a good player she is. And then you got the sentimentality of all the players that we've enjoyed watching this season who reacts very positively to the crowd. So the likes of Ona, Fuso, these kind of players who are they are fan favourites, like you say, Connor. But if they're not fitting the system, or if they can't, I'm not saying Ona can't, I'm just saying in general, if they're not playing, or if they're not first choice, or if they're not doing what Skinner's kind of asking of them, then, unfortunately, they might have to move on, haven't they? So I guess in answer to your question, we do need to get rid of sentimentality, so long as we're actually upgrading the quality of the team by doing that.
And so I suppose I would, the short answer to that would be if cutting out the sentimentality means that Manchester United women's football side are successful on the football pitch, then my answer will always be yes. Every single time, because I want Manchester United Football Club to be successful. Okay. But obviously, if you are going to release players, you have to be sure you have better coming in, and that what's coming in fits the system that you want to play. Because currently not having, for example, and again, this is not having maybe Diane or Maria means that Hayley and Katie have to play at centre back. So it might be that certain players we think going forwards aren't going to win Manchester United Women's Football Club Champions Leagues or get them into it. But at the moment we've not got anyone else. There aren't the players. So yes, we need to not be sentimental, but we also need to be sensible. And obviously there are certain players leaving that would be detrimental because they would be hard to replace because they are world-class players. But you look at, I hate talking about them, but like you look at Liverpool men's team and how cutthroat they were for a long time. Got players in, weren't good enough, got rid of them because they weren't up to what we needed. And if we want to be successful, we have to do that. And as hard as it is, there are certain players that I'll be really disappointed to see leave. And it's interesting about the women's game, isn't it? Because you know the players better.
Yeah.
Like you know them. You interact with them, you talk to them. So there's more of an emotional connection on a human level than there is in the men's game, which makes it harder. But if we're being honest, I think if anyone was being honest, you would say yes, you would take as success, you would take trophies over sentimentality, I think.
And John Kay, have you got anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, I agree with the points that Charlie made. I think it was TJ Trex in the comments said that, if you want to be the best, which is what we're trying to be, obviously it'll take 2-3 years to get it right, but you do need to have a squad who's capable of challenging, and that means that, yes, sometimes it can be a little unhelpful to have certain fan favourites. Again, I'm not going to name names because that would be unfair, but certain fan favourites, unfortunately, in my opinion, might not be good enough for us if we're going to be challenging for major honours and that kind of thing. And we're not even close to winning a title or even a trophy yet. Obviously, we reached semi-finals now, but we've still got a bit of a way to go. And you got to focus on positions, and also when you're replacing certain players, you got to make sure you get someone in who's just as good or even better to take you to the next level. And it's not just players that are leaving, it's also some players who could be good enough, but you also want to see more from as well. And I think, like I said, there are certain positions where we can improve and have to improve if we want to reach the top. And I think, you can't. Obviously, certain players will leave that are fan favourites, and it's sad, but you move on. I grew up in the men's team, some of my favourite players left, but United was still successful under Sir Alex Ferguson. So you got to learn to let go sometimes. But you can't let sentiment get in the way of progress.
Yeah, 100%. I just thought I'd ask everyone because it's an interesting
That's
conversation. And I agree with what you said, Charlie. I think in the women's game it's slightly different because you do speak to them after games, or you can if you want, and there is that kind of closer connection. Whereas like the men's, for example, I'm not going to be having a chat with Bruno after the game. It just doesn't happen. So there is that slight difference there. We'll move on to some of the things Skinner said. There wasn't too much by way of that made me think, oh wow, I can't believe he said that. There was nothing that really jumped out. There's a couple of points I've written down. We'll just discuss those briefly before we move on to the next day. Some of the things obviously he did say, obviously injury updates. I think he said that the only player out is Aoife for the first time in a while. I think he said he's going to have to leave players out, were his exact words, which is good to see that we've actually got some players back in. It's a little bit later than obviously we would have wanted. We'd have liked them back a couple of weeks ago to help us out, but it's good that these players are coming back to fitness, because it's something that we're going to need if we're really hanging on to top 3 now. It's not in our hands, but if we do want to get it, we're going to need a fully fit squad if we can. And obviously, you got asked about the draws, and we've had a lot of those. Obviously, our opponents this weekend held us to a draw last time as well. But the one thing he did say, and I just want to ask this one first, Charlie. I'll come to you, and then if John, if you want to jump off the back of this. When he was asked about the draws, he made an interesting point, which I think a lot of fans are not going to like, but I do actually agree with him. He said, if you have a look back at those draws, we were in control of the games. We're not rescuing draws. We're in control of the games, and we're conceding late on. Do you agree with that we were in control of these games? Because he didn't specify, obviously, which ones, but he kind of broadly said we were in control of all these draws. So do you think that we were, looking back at some of these? I agree to an extent, but I don't think for all of them.
You asked me that first. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I will say is I think I would agree with him to a point. I think the Everton game, we were in control until they scored. I think the game against City, where we were at home and we were 2-1 up and they were down to 10 players, and Mary made the wonder save and the ball just fell, unfortunately. I think we were in control of that game, and the same for the Arsenal one as well, if it wasn't for Viv Miedema being such a good footballer. But I feel the other ones, so West Ham, Tottenham, that felt incredibly uncomfortable to me for the majority actually of the game. There were a number where it didn't feel like we were in control, because being in the lead doesn't mean you're in control of everything else that's happening. So no, I would disagree a little bit. But again, that's me speaking as a fan who, and these recent games, we've all been there. Like John, not glasses John, was the same as me at the Villa game. It's so stressful because a draw isn't enough, and maybe to us fans it felt worse than it was. I think we've talked about this before, that as fans it maybe feels worse than what's actually happening. But I think if your back's against the wall for the last 5 or 6 minutes, that I don't know if that's in control. We seem to lose any sort of composure when teams are coming at us in the last 5 or 10 minutes, which then leads to conceding the goal. So I don't know. I'm not a football coach, but 50-50. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That's maybe a bit of a pathetic response. It's a bit sitting on the fence. But I'm just basing this on how I felt when I was at the game watching them.
I was going to say, just a quick follow-up one to that then. What would you class as being in control of the game? Because you don't have to answer this, Charlie, if you don't. I know John.
No, it's okay. So what
would you class as being in control?
Being able to keep hold of the ball, being able to string passes together, being able to make sensible decisions. And I think sometimes we don't make sensible decisions when we've got a 1-0 lead. There are times where we're well on top and we slow the game down. It seems a bit strange when we've got the other team on the back foot. And then there are times when we are 1-0 up and there are 4 or 5 minutes to go, and it isn't sensible to just be going for it at that point. But then we do seem to do that. We hoof the ball forwards and we lose possession. And I think that's when it's out of control. It doesn't mean you're going on and scoring 2 or 3 more goals. It just means you can keep the ball. You know when to slow the pace down, and you're in charge of the tempo of the game. For me.
It reminds me of how do you define the word comfortable? We had that debate a few months ago, and I think what Charlie said is pretty much how I was going to start it. Just because you're ahead, it doesn't mean that you're in control. And maybe if you could have rephrased it, you may have done. I don't know, but I don't know. I think sometimes you always have to think, if you're against a middle team or someone higher, there's going to be the last 10 minutes they're going to start throwing balls into the box. But then you look back at when City and Arsenal and Chelsea are in the lead, they tend to keep the ball, and that they never look like conceding. I think that's the difference. So no, I probably wouldn't use the word control, but But I was going to use the word favourites then, so you still might be favourites for the game even up until the last few minutes, because you've got that lead. But I don't know how to define it.
Do you feel like, and again, this might be because we don't support those teams, but whenever, like, I watch a lot of the games, whenever Arsenal, Chelsea, or Man City score their first goal, I always think, oh, that's it now.
Yeah.
They'll win that game now. Whereas sometimes when we score the first goal, I think, oh God,
we need another 2.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. But again, that could be the emotional response that you're having to it as a fan, and then just being annoyed by your closest sort of competition scoring. But
no, I do agree with that, but I think the proof's in the pudding. That's because we've given away quite a few leads. You know, if we hadn't given those leads away, then I probably do feel comfortable going 1-0 up. But because we have given the leads away, then I think we've got good reason to believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just quickly, I think it probably was down to down to confidence as well this season. Until they get into the summer and have a refresh, you know, this season in a 3-4 week span, we'd conceded, you know, to Durham late on, we conceded to Everton late on, conceded to Spurs late on, conceded to Leicester and the Conti late on. That's like over 5-6 weeks, and then for the rest of the season, and on City as well, actually at home. For the rest of the season, I say this all the time, West Ham, you could feel it. It was like almost inevitable that they were going to score because we've been here before. So I think we were. This is where John, I'll come to you in a second. But this is where I think he was kind of right. We were in control, but that kind of inevitability in the back of maybe the players' minds that you know, that's probably why they're long balling, because they're worrying. They think, oh God, we've been here before. We don't want to give this away. And just panicking and hitting it long. I said it on Sunday. You know, we just panicked. The last 15-20 minutes, you could see it on the player. They didn't want to. So John, what do you think on that one then? Do you think we were in control? And where do you stand on this then? Do you think it's more maybe on the players' mentality side? And, you know, maybe
I mean, to me, to be in control of the football game is where you're controlling the tempo and you're controlling the possession, but not just for the sake of controlling possession, but controlling possession with a purpose. And I think the Aston Villa game, let's be honest, I don't really remember Villa having a great chance or anything. So we're in the control of that sense, in that I didn't feel we were vulnerable to conceding unless they had a corner or something. I felt we were in control in that we weren't going to concede. But like you say, it was the panicking. You know, like we started the game well, for example, the first 15 minutes or so, but and we were passing, moving for each other and that. But then it seemed to stop, and then we had a bit of it in the second half. But then it stopped, and you know, the players weren't moving around for each other. They kept moving the ball long and that kind of thing. And occasionally it did work, the 2 or 3 times, but most of the time it wasn't working. And this is why when you're talking about control, you have to control, like I say, is possession, but with the aim of doing something. And I think when we were passing the ball, it wasn't really with a purpose. It was because there was not only one option available. For example, there wasn't really that movement and at certain times, and this is why if we're going to improve in the future, you've got to. Like my favourite player ever was Paul Scholes, because he knew how to control the game, and even if, like at Aston Villa, I was saying to you, Charlie, wasn't I, just get that one goal, you know. And I think maybe the element of the goal difference was having an impact on our general way, that we had to score 3 or 4. And I was like, no, you focus on getting the first one. And then as soon as you get the first one, then you can maybe then look at a second and a third one. And the other thing with the games you mentioned, about when Chelsea and Arsenal go 1-0 up, yes, they do often go on and win. Whereas with us, it's like we get the first one when we're playing well. And then we continue to play well for a bit more, but then we don't get the second goal, you know. And then when while you're not putting pressure on the other teams to score that second goal, we all know 1-0 is a very dangerous goal line, and the opposing team will always get a chance. And unfortunately, we've been punished for it. So what we have to do better next season and in the future is learn to control the tempo, but as soon as you get 1-0 up, learn to go 2-0 up, And then when you're 2-0 up, that's pretty much the game sealed unless something miraculous happens. So, yeah, that's what I would say, that at times we are in control, other times you need a bit more.
I wonder if this is me using my non-existent sports psychology degree. I don't have one, but I pretend I do for now. A lot of our sort of this whole thing about conceding 12 points from however many games last 10 minutes, and lots of that has come down to individual error, which does happen. It's not necessarily because I think Mark's right when he says we're not overrun, we're not outplayed in the games that we're drawing, but it's been individual error, and it felt a bit like in the game against Villa. It was like it was tentative for me. It was people weren't showing for a throw in, they weren't coming to receive the ball. It was almost like perhaps that there's also that worry of if I have the ball, I might make an error here in a position that's quite dangerous if the opposition get the ball, which then obviously does impact the ability to pass and move and keep the ball, because no one really wants it, because no one wants to make the mistake. So it's more thinking about how will I not fail rather than how will I be successful. And I also wonder if it could be that, because it has been a lot of individual error that's led to things, and those things can be corrected, thankfully. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with our gameplay necessarily on a consistent basis, but perhaps that could also be something.
I agree, and I think a lot of the times as well we see our players marking. I call it all the time, marking themselves out of the game, because it's very easy, and I used to do it occasionally when I used to play years and years ago. You stand next to an opponent, because it makes it look like you're making a run, but you just follow your opponent because you don't want the ball. So you're kind of marking yourself. It makes it look like you're moving. You are, but you also can't receive the ball because somebody's right next to you. And I think our players have been guilty of that a little bit this season.
Do you know who always wants the ball? And people can disagree with me. Katie Zellum always wants the ball.
Yes.
Katie Zellum always wants the ball. And that's why she has to be on the football pitch for me every single week.
It's bang on. And that's why I always say when people criticise, I think we've got a few players in our squad where their football intelligence is very high. I think Kate is one of those. You can almost tell when you watch players. Look at how many times they scan. Take a 10-minute slot and watch a player and look at how many times they scan the pitch around them. Katie is one of the best in our squad at doing that. Just the little looks to see where everyone is on the pitch, and that little bit of composure as well. And what you were saying as well about mentality, that 100% I think has played a massive part. Certainly in the last few months with West Ham and obviously what's just gone on. I think people really underestimate mentality in sport in general. Anyone who's played sport will tell you, it's a massive part, because it's very hard to get something out the back of your mind. I go back to when I used to play tennis, for example. If I did a double fault and I knew, say, a load of double faults in a game prior, a match prior, the next game that would come on, if I hit one double fault, I think, oh god, I don't want to do that again. And then it starts playing in your mind. So I think for some of these players, it probably has, like you said there, they almost don't want they don't want to be that one that makes the mistake. They don't want to be that one that misses a shot or something like that. So, yeah, I think that has played a part. So I can see where Skinner's coming from with the in control of games. It's fine tuning, I think, is the right word. Something else that kind of links into Skinner's comments then. John Commode, I don't know if you want to lead us in with the conversation that you wanted to start on that one.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss mainly the fitness and in particular the substitutions. Now, obviously, as you know, John, I wasn't particularly happy with taking Russo off on Sunday, but no, I think it goes to the point that it's a lack of options on the bench, and this is where we're falling short compared to the likes of City and Chelsea and Arsenal. That their squad depth is better than ours. Like when you bring in certain players on to replace your key players, unfortunately they're not at the same level. They're not to say they're bad players, but they're not at the same level. And I just think that, and this ties into we're talking about Senior Brune. You take Russo off, who's your main goal scorer when you need a goal. Now, ideally, if you replace him with Brune, then you can have a chance to score. I know she hasn't scored yet, but she's known to be a goal scorer. But But what we did was we took Russo off and put Martha Thomas up front. Now, obviously, I do like Martha Harris. You know, she's a workaholic and all that, but unfortunately, she's not the best in front of goal, as the other day proved by missing a couple of key chances. And I just think that in regards to, and it ties into the possession arguments as well, and controlling games, that certain key players of ours seem to run out of steam in the second half of games a lot of the time. You know, it's like in most games we tend to start on the front foot, and we've done pretty well, particularly at home this season, where we've been 2-0 or 3-0 up at half time, sometimes 2-0 up after 20 minutes. That kind of thing. So we put our foot on the accelerator from the start, and then we manage it the second half. And certain players, you know, like Leah Galton's, obviously she's a brilliant player, but you know, she's more impactful in the first half than in the second half in certain games. And you therefore have to say players off. Like you mentioned the other day, kind of Russo comes off in games sometimes. In there, what you need is improvement in the squad, but also to focus on the players' fitness as well, because certain players, key players, have been injured for us, and it's not the first time it's happened. It happened last season as well. And you mentioned that the centre halves, if Mannion, Billy Turner have missed the last 3 months or so. If we brought Dan Caldwell in, she did a good job, but then she got injured. Marie's possibly been the most consistent one, but then we've had to play players like Zelen and that in defence, and you're taking them out of their best position. And I think the fitness in terms of certain players, it ties into inside drawing games, but also the injury arguments. And for me, it's not like they're too dissimilar, because I think there is possibly a relation. And I think if we are to progress forward, we really need to look at the fitness department and start looking at fine players you can rely on as well, that that you can obviously trust to be available for most games during the season.
Yeah, it opens up so many questions. I think this was the big one for me. If you're talking just from Sunday, you know, you've got a player with energy, experience. You know, I know she's still relatively young as well, but she's obviously experienced with United. I personally don't get that one in particular. Charlie, John, I don't know whether either of you want to jump on that, and then obviously John's points there.
I was saying to you, Charlie, I think at half time, I think I mentioned it to it was Barry. I said I didn't think Martha Thomas was having the best game, and I thought, well, she's not a winger. You know, she isn't a winger, and that's not to say she did a bad job, but she wasn't playing on Sunday night. So why not get a proper winger on and put Russo up top? But then what he did was he took Russo off, who I think was playing okay, and then put Martha up front. Unfortunately, she missed a couple of chances, and we didn't really have that natural winger, and I think that might have cost us potentially. So yeah, I do personally think it was a mistake not to bring Hansen on for Thomas, unfortunately.
Do you want to jump in on that one first, Charlie?
Yeah, I always think it's interesting when you have a ready-made type of player on the bench, and instead you play someone who is not that type of player in that position instead. So there's got to be, like, again, it's just surmising, there's got to be something in that, hasn't there? And you can talk about for quite a while that front three worked actually quite well. There was a good few games, wasn't there, where Martha and Leslie and Leah, it was working really well, but it's petered out a little bit. So you would have expected perhaps something to change earlier in games. So it wasn't unusual, and obviously that. So Russo, we talked about Russo, didn't we, in the match reaction, that she always seems to come off at about 70 minutes, and then for Martha to go up top, but then still Kirsty Hansen didn't come on. It was two other central midfielders that came on. But I don't know. I feel like there's got to be something in the fact that she's not playing. I think. Did she come on again? Was it Leicester she came on against with about? No, it was Brighton. Was it Brighton? 15, 20 minutes to go, and she actually really made things happen.
Yeah.
Because we said she chases lost causes and she runs at players and she commits them, and she's like a fridge, isn't she, as well? Like she's just pure, like she's solid. She's like G.I. Jane, like she's hard to get off the ball. But that's true though, isn't it? And at that point in a game when an opposition defence is tiring because they've been under pressure the whole game, which the majority of teams are against us, she can come on and do a really, really good job. So it is, yeah, it's strange. It was me you were talking to about it, John. It was definitely us talking about it because we were both getting purple over it. But yeah, I would really like to be a fly on the wall and understand why she's not getting a look in, particularly at the moment when it's so hard for us to come by goals at the moment, to not make some of those more obvious attacking changes and go a little bit more with the wide players. Particularly when actually even Martha Thomas, if you're going to play with number 9, she gets on the ball really well within the 6-yard box. She can win headers and she can make things happen that way.
I think it comes down to something that we mentioned at the start of the show about having experienced players on the pitch. So I really like Hansen. I think I'm a third biggest fan. I'll give it to Benny first. I think Benny's the biggest fan. Then I'm going to say Barry, because Barry started the hashtag in, and then I'll put myself underneath those, because I really do like Hansen. I love natural wingers. I like players who can run a defence, especially like you said, when they're tired. She should be in one form of tactic the first substitute that you bring on. However, I always worry that the style of play that we've been playing under Skinner, it's all about possession based. Now, what she's very good at is running down the wing and putting crosses in potentially, or tracking back and supporting the defence. Maybe Skinner's thinking, well, we have got a chance of scoring if you put a ball into the box, but we've also got probably a bigger chance of actually losing possession, because it's not very often that you put a cross in the box. I reckon probably 7 or 8 times out of 10 you put a cross into the box and you'll lose possession. Whereas bringing Staniforth in and putting like almost 5 in midfield, even though she's not necessarily driving at defenders and causing havoc that way, she's keeping the ball and waiting for other movements around her. That could just be one suggestion. I don't know if it is. I really like Hansen. I think, if you want a winger, then, for me, I love Hansen then at one side. But I can't think of too many other reasons why you wouldn't bring on Hansen if you want wing play. So to me, we just don't want wing play. We want play that one.
You've got to have a variety, and I think this is like the game on Sunday. Unfortunately, it wasn't working. So you got to try and think differently. Like Robin system, it's supposed to be possession based now, but we weren't really keeping all the possession in the way you wanted to. When you need a goal, you got to think outside the box how you're going to get a goal, what's the best way you're going to get a goal. And yes, you might give the ball across into the box and give possession way, but then it only takes one time to get it right, and someone might edit in. So, it's you got to try and, because Villa were very well set up as well, you got to do something to break that rhythm. And I'm often thinking if teams are playing narrow, you got to use your width. And if you're going to use your width, the best way to do that is wingers who can whip in a good ball. So I think that's what I would say, that you need to. Maybe she isn't within the plans from the start, but if you need something different when things aren't working, then you need to look at doing something different when the way you're trying to play isn't working. And you got to think, how best are we going to get a goal? And I think that was a missed opportunity.
I agree to an extent. I was baffled by Hansen not coming on, but I disagree with what your comment and also with Mark's comment here. Saying if you don't attack, you'll never score. I made the point on Monday's show that, like I said, our chance creation was one of the highest it's been all season in that game against Villa. But the difference with this, we didn't take our chances early enough, and then the pressure builds. And like I said, the pressure of maybe goal difference was on their mind, thinking, we need a couple here, rather than just thinking about the one. They were thinking about, we need 3 or 4. And I think, like I said, we created a lot of chances in that game. If you watch it back, there were golden opportunities. And like I said, if you take 1 or 2 of those in the first half, it's a completely different game in the second half because Villa then can't sit as far back as they were, because then eventually they've got to do something. Opens up more spaces, and that's what Chelsea, City and Arsenal do. They'll score one, they'll get the second pretty much straight away most of the time, and they're able either to control the game or they'll get 3, 4, 5 and the game's done because they can go and batter teams. We cannot get that goal early enough, and when we do, we can't hold on to it because we can't get the second and the third. So it's straight, because, like I said, I'm baffled by why Hansen didn't come on in that particular moment. But at the same time, I think we are creating enough chances. As Mark said there, 18 chances, 6 on target. But what I'm saying is the expected goals of those chances were very high. Jackie had a volley from 6 yards out, half the goal's open. He mishits it, goes across. Martha Thomas had a one-on-one, hit 2 one-on-ones, hits it straight to the keeper, one goes wide, and obviously the open goal as well. Stanley had a chance right at the end. Tooney had a chance. Zellum had a shot down the mid. We had enough to win that game. But I think I agree with the point that that's where you change it a little bit. But then I agree with John Foster's point that there's got to be a reason. That there has to be. There's clearly something in Skinner and Martin Ho and whoever else is on the touchline that they're looking at going, Hansen's not right for this. There's got to be, otherwise they wouldn't make those decisions. So it's a strain. Go on, Charlie.
So it sounds like, for me, Connor, what you're saying is like we're not conceding goals, so we're defending well, and our goalkeeper's world class. We're creating loads of chances, but the forward players aren't clinical enough, or they haven't got concentration or the composure that they need to have at certain points in the game, and then therefore perhaps that's where we need to concentrate, or get a centre back. So we've got enough centre backs in the summer, but that's where we need to concentrate the business that we're going to do this summer.
Yeah, and
because
I think
everyone knows Russo's going to score our goals. Russo's going to score our goals. If not her, probably Ella Toon. So it can be quite predictable that way. So that's
and what happens if one of them gets injured?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
it's not just these late goals that cost us. It's just that when we're controlling those games earlier on, we're not getting that second. If you get a second in those games, you win that game. That's what it comes down to.
My mind's gone completely blank. I had something I can't remember for the life of me what it was going to be now. I can't remember. It's gone.
It's completely
gone. Is it what, sorry?
If it's important, it will come back to you.
It will. And yes, I agree with your comment. That is the. I say that every week. You can, and I hate comparing us to the best teams, but you've got to do that if you want to be the best team. So.
We want to be the standard. We don't want to chase the standard. We want to be the standard, and that's what they said when they created this football team. That's 100%. What they said.
100%. We'll move on slightly then, and this will go on.
No, I was going to say, is it Charlie's topic? Because I'm looking forward to this one.
Indeed, and I think before we get to your nominations, Charlie, I think there was something obviously that you wanted to go through as well. Your unsung heroes, I think it was.
Yeah, this was like really difficult for me. And Connor was like, come up with a talking point for the show. Bear in mind, all I do is to think about Man United Women's Football Club. I can think of nothing. But then came to us out, and I was thinking about like the player that's the unsung hero / surprise package. So someone who has maybe performed better than you ever anticipated they would, or we think actually does a lot for the team, for how the team works and goes under the radar. Now, the fellas probably here know exactly who I'm going to talk about without me having to say anything. They know who it is, but I'd be interested to know what yours are. But I'd go, for me, it's Katie Zellum all day long as our unsung hero. Not a surprise package because she's phenomenal, we know that, but as an unsung hero who I think takes a fair bit of flack and shouldn't. She's got 7 goals and she's got 7 assists, and that's from a lot of the time having to actually play probably in a deeper role than she would want to. Occasionally at centre back, and then with Hayley being out injured for a while, she was having to take up that role as sort of the deep line midfielder. I also think she's a phenomenal leader. I think sometimes people think that leaders have to be screaming and shouting and flailing around all the time and being on show. But actually, if you watch her, I think she communicates brilliantly. I think she's a really good verbal communicator. And I also think she is our most composed player on the ball, which I've already said. And she would be the first name on the team sheet for me. I absolutely love her. And I think people don't always see the good work that she does, in my opinion. So she's my unsung hero. Not a surprise package, because I'm not surprised that she's got these numbers that she has. And she's given me my second favourite moment of the season. The first one will always be Arsenal Conti Cup. But to be fair, she assisted that, so she was a key part of that. But
who scored it?
Like, it was the second for me. It was the second corner against Leicester. That was unbelievable for me. That was like an unreal moment, because you should never score 2 from a corner. But I think she's phenomenal. I think she takes a lot of criticism for the team, I think. And she's probably been harshly spoken about, and she shouldn't have been, because of how much she actually offers as a captain and just as a footballer as well.
It's going to open up, because I think I'm going to try and think of somebody different, actually, for mine. John Foster, I'll let you go first on this one. If you had to pick one in terms of like an unsung hero, somebody maybe that's gone under the radar, surprised you, who would yours be?
I do agree with Charlie, but just to think of someone different, I'm not going to say Hayley Ladd, because I think it's got to a point there where we keep on saying that Hayley Ladd's an unsung hero and she goes under the radar, to the point where she's not going under the radar anymore. We know that she's quality at what she does, so I'm going to try and steer away from that one, even though that would probably be the correct answer. I think at the start of the season, I would have probably said Fuso. I think she has took me by surprise, and I tried to think of someone different. I think at the start of the season, she kind of proved me wrong, because the first season we didn't see too much of her, and I was a little bit worried for her. I think obviously the second half of the season she hasn't really played, but that first half of the season I was calling her to start some of the games. Her wingers weren't performing at the time, and when she did come on, she looked very dangerous. She looked very pacey. I think she was good in the centre and out wide. So yeah, I would probably just, outside the box, I would probably say, if I were Fuso, but if I was to say someone who's took me by surprise, I would want to say Carrie Jones, because to come from the depths straight into the senior team again at the start of the season, she's had more game time than any other devs, where Skinner's obviously seen something in her at the start, more than Marie Edwards, and she's actually done really, really well. So I would like to call out those two names, just because we don't speak about them enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Hayley Ladd would be a good one. Obviously, Rucho's had a season which probably no one would have expected us to have that level. I'm trying to think. I was impressed by Millie Turner before she got injured. I thought her and Ifemanya were very good in that defence when it was our purple patch between December and January. Around that period, I thought her and Manu were very solid in defence, and unfortunately, I personally think it has curtailed our season to some degree. But yeah, I'll give a shout out to Millie Turner before she got injured.
And I've listened to you all speak, and I've still not come up with a name, because I'm trying to think of somebody different. Because I think mine would have obviously been Zellum, because, like I said, I don't think she gets the praise that just because she does things that, if you're not just watching the kind of the tactical elements of a game, if you, like I said, take a step away and watch it less as of a fan and watch it more from a tactical side, I think you'd understand some of what she does on the pitch that's maybe not recognised. But I think somebody that surprised me, John, actually, Foster, you kind of stole my shout there in terms of Carrie Jones, because like you said, she played a lot at the start of the season. I think she started against Durham as well in the Conti Cup. Did she start against City in the Conti Cup as well? Or did she come on in that game? I think she might have come on in that game. But she's had a lot of minutes earlier on in the season. And to be her age and to come into a squad that has been trying to push on this season, albeit I'm sure behind the scenes they were trying to keep it, just to steady the ship this season, go properly next season. But to do that early on, yeah, I think it's, I'm going to have to say Carrie Jones as well, despite the fact I was going to try and pick somebody different. And as Daniel said it there, need more minutes in the first team or alone next season. I think you could say that for pretty much half of the academy squad, actually. I think Skinner said something in his interview, obviously, about the devs as well, talking about the gap. It's clearly there. These players need some experience at a higher level as well. We've reached the point of the show, Charlie. I've been looking forward to this all day, because we were chatting. I've got, like I said, you're not going to get mine today, but I've narrowed down my nominations to 4. I think you said you got yours pretty much straight away when I asked yesterday. So
Yes,
And then
I did. And then you
Go for
were
it.
sort of a bit critical of that. I'm not critical, but like, really. And then I was like, oh, okay. So mine. So I think someone put in the comments about Ether Mannion, and I think I said to you, if she hadn't missed the last third of the season, she would have been up there for me, and probably a potential unsung hero as well. But my two nominations are, one will be no surprise. So one is Russo. Because of what she's given to the team this season. She's scored the goals, but she's also scored twice against Arsenal. She's scored against City. She's scored against Chelsea. So she's not just stat padding against teams at the bottom of the table. She's performing against the highest caliber of team we've got in the WSL. She gets assists. She's powerful. She's technical. She occupies defenders. She can dribble. So she's one of my nominations. And my other one is going to be Mary Earps. The reason for that, I also think she's a phenomenal leader. She has had to be a goalkeeper behind a very inconsistent back line in the sense of the personnel has changed quite a lot. Sometimes it's been non-defenders having to play in that position. So she's had to face, which is quite a difficult time of it in some games. I think her shot stopping is even better this season. I think she struggled a little bit last season, but a few that come to mind, I think it was early doors in the home game against City, where it was like a point blank header from 6 yards out. The away game against Arsenal, she was unreal. She made some really world-class saves that I think went viral, went everywhere. I think also with her, if you look at the stats, I think we've conceded 15 goals in WSL, and 6 of those are against that game we don't like to mention. So actually, with an inconsistent back line, with midfielders playing in defence, we've conceded 9 goals if you don't include the Chelsea game. Now, for me, that's phenomenal. And part and parcel of that has to be down to her, because we know an important part of the goalkeeper's role actually is looking at the back line and watching what's happening in front of you and marshalling that to an extent, particularly when you haven't got your 2 starting centre-backs. And probably Aoife and Millie would have done that between them quite easily. That's a role she's probably had to take on. So for me, she deserves to be in there, absolutely. I also think she's phenomenal in the air. I think she claims so many crosses and corners under immense pressure from opposition players. I never worry about that. When someone crosses into our box from a set piece, I'm never worried about it, because she always claims it. She's so in control of what's happening in her 6-yard box. She's in charge. She's in charge of what's happening in there, nobody else. So for me, she is my second nomination. So Russo and Earps.
Interesting as well, because you've I'm trying to find it. There we go. TJ also agrees with you, Russo and Earps. I think
good.
Russo is going to get in everybody's, and I worry. Don't worry, but I think she will run away with this, because I think she's going to get in everyone's one of 2. Mary Earps is all of a sudden, we've had quite a few votes for Mary Earps today. Quite a lot, actually. I think she's caught up in the votes, if I'm not correct. I'll try and bring it up.
She's been the ever presence in defence, hasn't she? So, and I think that's, we have, like Charlie mentioned, we have been, I know we've conceded a lot of goals that cost us games, but overall we have been defensively solid this season.
I always think I think she put her hand up, didn't she, in the Everton game? She made one mistake in the Everton game that led to their goal. And for lesser people would have crumbled, would have made more mistakes after that. But she owned it, and then she just got better after that.
I think there was that one, and also the City FA Cup game. Apart from that, she hasn't really pulled up wrong, has she?
No.
See, I'd also throw in Spurs away as well. I think she's got to save that as well. Not that I'm too critical, but I think she's got to save that one as well. So when we're talking about just costly errors, I think maybe, but it doesn't take away, the season she's had. I think has been phenomenal. 2 seconds. Let me just add that to our list. Well, someone say, John, sing a song or something while I'm putting this in.
Well, I want to give Connor some banter now, so if everyone else can put some comments in, just so we can see Connor get really uptight and frustrated here and see how he copes with all this pressure, because he's actually inputting something onto his little spreadsheet and database right now. If you want to dust Connor a bit more, just put some more nominations in.
Right. I've updated it. I'm not putting any. No, please do send us your 2 nominations. I said we've had quite a lot, so I'm trying to just update that now to make sure that is correct. Everyone gets 2 votes. We're trying to make sure that everyone has their say in this, and we'll do a show at the end of the season where we pick. Where we announce the top 5, and also we'll do goal of the season as well. But we'll wait until the season's finished for that one. So at the moment, it is looking like, and like I said, there's going to be no surprise who is way out front. If I can share my screen in 2 seconds. So there's no surprise who's out front by quite a clear margin. But what has surprised me, obviously, just based on today's, I can see a few. John, look what you've done now. Obviously, there's a few more shouts that have just come in. But at the moment, obviously, Russo is leading by quite a hefty margin. But Mary Earps has moved into second. I think that's the surprise for me, that she moved second. But it's not over yet.
Pleasant surprise.
Indeed. And I think someone's made this point on a show 2 weeks ago or last week as well. The fact we've got so many, I think, or at the moment, there's 5 names that are on there at the moment, but I think there's going to be a few more. I can see Mark's comment there. That will obviously add another name on there as well. But the fact that we've got so many players to choose from this season, obviously I know Russo has taken the majority of the vote so far. It's only a good thing and it shows that we've had a good season, the fact that we've got quite a lot of players in there as well.
I think I'm going to vote when I do vote. One of my players isn't even in there yet. So that's going to be interesting to see if anybody else agrees or disagrees.
I was going to say, I've not even. Mine's down to 4 players at the moment. So
he's going to go for few, so
Things like Carrie Jones. No.
There is a few.
It is interesting. No one's voted for Ethan Mannion, and it's a shame that injuries are caught up, because I reckon she would have been a good contender for that. So,
yeah, 100%. And also the fact that Mark is the first person to vote on her, I think that's very surprising to me as well, because I think she's been one of our best players this season. But everyone gets their vote. We'll continue to put these polls out and things like that to get your votes in. There'll be a few tweets over the next few weeks to make sure everyone has theirs on there. We'll wrap up the show there because consciously it's Friday night and everyone needs to. I think it's barbecue weather still, just about. If you if you want that, but Saturday Night Live, I believe, is back tomorrow night at the usual time. Is it back at 7:30, John?
7:30, yeah.
So make sure you check out that one. And obviously, match day content on Sunday for the last home game of the season. That has come around ridiculously fast this season. Yeah. But yeah, make sure you stay tuned for that. And obviously, the match reaction will be back on Monday, where we're going to be back in the top 3 consistently because City are going to lose tomorrow. So look out for that one as well. Thanks for these 3 for giving it their Friday evenings for coming on here, and we'll see you guys soon.